This is the story of the war that dares not speak its name. A war that started over 40 years ago, but has never officially been declared. The war between Iran on the one side and the United States and Israel on the other is both ideological and strategic. A conflict that never fails to stir up passions, resentment, and hatred. And if it ever really did kick off in earnest, the entire Middle East would go up in flames, very possibly triggering a new global conflict. So to understand this potential return to barbaric violence, we must go back in time to unravel the tangled threads of tragedy and seek the elusive truths behind the dogmas and certainties, and tell this story.
Concentrate fire on the target.
All right, y'all. This intro was hard body. I'm about to rewind that back and watch this again.
This is the story of the war that dares not speak its name. A war that started over 40 years ago, but has never officially been declared. The war between Iran on the one side and the United States and Israel on the other is both ideological and strategic. A conflict that never fails to stir up passions, resentment, and hatred. And if it ever really did kick off in earnest, the entire Middle East would go up in flames, very possibly triggering a new global conflict. So to understand this potential return to barbaric violence, we must go back in time to unravel the tangled threads of tragedy and seek the elusive truths behind the dogmas and certainties, and tell this story. The history of war began on February 1st, 1979, aboard a flight from Paris to Tehran. An old man prays. This is Ayatollah Khomeini. He is preparing to radically change the history of Iran.
All right. We can stop that right there. Yes, indeed. What's going on? It's your boy, Jay Taylor, Voices for the Voiceless, and I'm back with another video, and this is going to be a good one. This is going to be real good. Who you see on your screen right now is Ayatollah Khomeini, and he, as they said, is going to change the landscape in Iran in 1979, coming in from Paris forever. Right? So we can stop that right there. Peace of blessings, everybody. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. And yes, man, as promised, I'm finally able to come into the studio and break this down with the receipts. As you know, I've been doing a series pretty much on my thoughts. And as the title says, I brought the receipts, a brief timeline of events, my thoughts on the war, part 3, right? So you can go back to part 1, part 2. I break down the history and everything like that between Iran, Israel, and the United States, and how all of this conflict came about, right? But today I'm able to be in the studio with the actual some good videos to bring up to substantiate what I've been telling you for the last couple videos, right? So as you saw in that intro, that was Ayatollah Khamenei. Now he fled in exile back in like 1950s or 60s when the Shah came about. Now we understand, if you listen to the other videos, that the United States and Britain back in 1953 formed a coup with the CIA in the United States to play an intricate part and interfere in Iran's election. So we're going to break all that down. And when we formed that coup to interfere in their election, we installed our own presidential pick for Iran so we could have access to the oil. We're going to break all that down. And that was the origins of conflict, right? So before we get knee deep in the content, I want to go ahead and get the disclaimer out the way. So let's do that right now. All right. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right. Now, this feels back. It feels so good to be back in the stew, cooking up with y'all, man. Hope everybody's been well. But like I said, we got to go back in time and really look at the history to understand where all of this started, and to lay some context as to why Iran felt as though we were the big Satan and Israel is the little Satan. In this particular video, I'm really going to concentrate on the United States and Iran. And in my next video, I'm going to talk more about Israel and Iran's, their history, because they were close allies as well. But let's go back in time to 1953, when the CIA in the United States and Britain formed this interference into Iran's election. You know, we got to be honest about history. You know what I'm saying? That was bogus. So we want to bring some context to that, because what you're going to see is Mohammad Mossadegh was the president at the time, and he decided to nationalize Iran's oil companies, right? When he decided to do that,
the dismissal of Iran's elected prime.
When he decided to do that, the United States and Britain didn't want that to happen, because we would lose power or some, our influence over their oil infrastructure. So that's why we formulated this coup, to get this guy that's on the screen out of office and implement our own candidate, which is the Shah. So they gonna get into that, right? And this is back in 1953. This was kicked off everything. The United States and Britain was over there doing business with Iran for the oil, and Iran got to a point where they said no more, because they wasn't getting the most bang for their buck. We was getting over. Let's be honest. You know what I'm saying? So without further ado, let's get to it.
The dismissal of Iran's elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh in 1953, Operation Ajax. The year 1953 stands as a dark chapter in Iran's history when the democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh was removed through a joint conspiracy by the American intelligence agency CIA and the British MI6. This event, known as Operation Ajax, was not only a severe blow to Iran's sovereignty, but also had deep and lasting effects on Middle Eastern politics and the global oil industry. Mohammad Mossadegh, famous for nationalizing Iran's oil industry, was a popular leader who struggled against British colonial exploitation. After his removal, the monarchy of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was restored, giving Western companies renewed access to.
Okay, now this is the Shah. This is the guy that the United States and Britain got behind and basically gave him the power to be the president of Iran. So we used him so we could continue to have access to the oil in Iran. Now, he got into power. And when he got into, he wasn't a great president to the Iranian people. He was very wealthy, but he didn't spread the wealth amongst the people. So eventually the people revolted against him. This is the Shah, right? And when they revolted, that's when Ayatollah came back by popular demand of the Iranian people. And when he came back, they went to an Islamic state. Now, what you see today, Iran. But when this guy, the Shah, was in office, they looked at just like Western civilization, because he was implemented by the United States. He was an Iranian man, but he was working with the United States. So his rulership was that mirrored the United States culture and everything. We're going to get to that. But I just want to make sure we stop right here so y'all know this is the guy that we implemented. And watch what they do to the current president. It was bogus.
Iran's oil industry. This incident is a clear example of the Cold War era when Western powers did not hesitate to overthrow democratic governments to protect their economic interests. Mohammad Mossadegh, who was deposed, was a leader who announced the nationalization of Iran's oil industry, thereby ending the monopoly of the British company Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, later
known as BP. We all heard of course, everybody got a BP. This was Britain having control over Iran's oil industry. So, that's a lot of oil. We got BPs all over the place. They was first Amoco back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Now they BP. This is a, byproduct of that business arrangement, you know what I'm saying, between Britain and Iran, and later the United States.
Known as BP. This step was an important move toward Iran's economic sovereignty, but it deeply angered Britain and the United States, who wanted to keep control of the oil industry. Operation Ajax was not only a covert operation, but also a clear representation of Western imperialism, which subjected Iran to decades of dictatorship and foreign interference. Mohammad Mossadegh was born in Tehran in 1882 into an aristocratic family. He studied law and political science in France and Switzerland, and then returned to Iran to enter politics. In the 1940s, he became a member of Iran's parliament, Majlis, and emerged as a leader of the nationalist movement. At that time, Iran's oil industry was controlled by the British Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which under the 1901 agreement gave Iran only 16% of the profits, while the rest went to Britain.
See that? 16% of the profit went to Iran. That's why Mohammed Mossadegh came in and said, Britain, United States, y'all got to get up out of our land. We finna nationalize our own oil because y'all ain't finna give us 16%. Can you blame them? Now, mind you, this is 1953. And the United States and Britain didn't like this.
This exploitation caused deep anger among the Iranian people. In 1951, Mossadegh was elected prime minister and announced the nationalization of the oil industry. This law was passed by the Majlis and brought Iran's oil production and sales under national control. This strengthened Iran's economic sovereignty, but Britain refused to accept it and announced a global boycott of Iranian oil. Britain filed cases in the United Nations and the International Court of Justice, but Mossadegh successfully defended Iran's position.
Now, how is you going Britain is going to go into the United Nations, basically try to pull this guy in court, saying it's not, how you going to nationalize your own oil and kick us out? Newsflash, this is my country. I'm the prime minister. You not finna keep raping us. Pardon me, you ain't gonna keep raping us. Only giving us 16% of the profit while you run off with the other 80%, 90%. But you gonna try to take me to court for taking control of my own country in this oil? Like, the nerve of them British people, like, y'all is crazy.
However, in the context of the Cold War, the United States feared that Iran might fall under communist influence. Mossadegh's nationalism and commitment to democracy made him extremely popular among the people, but this popularity was seen as a threat by Western powers. The foundation of Operation Ajax was laid in 1952, when Britain's MI6 proposed intervention in Iran to the American CIA. Britain's main goal was to regain control over the oil industry, while the United States feared the spread of communism. At that time, U.S. President Dwight Eisenhower and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill approved the operation. CIA officer Kermit Roosevelt, the grandson of Theodore Roosevelt, was assigned to lead the operation. The planning of the operation involved propaganda, bribery, and violence. The CIA and...
Now, we tell y'all all the time that propaganda is a tool, the media is a tool to demonize people, to, taint the minds of the public, to taint the minds of the rest of the world. They used propaganda back then to demonize Mohammed Mossadegh. So this is the same playbook, the same soup warmed over on how these people play in the government. You know what I'm saying? Like this Theodore Roosevelt, Dwight Eisenhower, and all these, we talk about back in the day. They use propaganda and all these other, different playbooks, that they still use today to basically interfere in this country's election.
And MI6 bribed Iranian military officers, police, and religious leaders to incite a rebellion against Mossadegh. Newspapers and radio were used to portray Mossadegh as a communist and a traitor. The first attempt, on August 15th, 1953, failed when military officers tried to arrest Mossadegh, but public protests stopped them. However, the second attempt on August 19th was successful. hired mobs and military officers staged demonstrations in Tehran, attacked Mossadegh's house, and arrested him. About $7 million were spent on this operation, which was a huge amount at that time.
$7 million in 1953 was a lot of bread. It was a lot on the line to get this guy out of office.
This conspiracy was not only secretive, but also shook the foundations of democracy. Mossadegh was arrested and brought before a court where he was sentenced to 3 years in prison, and for the rest of his life, he remained under house arrest.
Wow, see, he was already an older dude. Then they put him in prison for 3 years, and he was on house arrest for the remainder of his life. That's a cold-blooded demonstration right there.
Immediately after Mossadegh's removal, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was restored to power, having previously fled the country. The Shah's government once again granted Western companies access to the oil industry. In 1954, a new company called the Iranian Oil Consortium was established, in which British BP received 40%, American companies 40%, and others 20%. This agreement gave Iran 50% of the profits, which was better than before, but still favored.
All right, so they went from 16% to 50%. That's still crazy, because you're going to give me 50% of my own profit. You know what I'm saying? Man, it's a cold game. It's a cold game.
Favored Western companies. The Shah's dictatorship turned Iran into a police state where opposition was brutally crushed. The CIA trained Iran's secret police, SAVAK.
Okay, so you see he had like a very, aggressive rulership with this police, SAVAK. I've been hearing about them, like they were very, like, police brutality was heavy back then. Like he ruled, he was very strict. But the thing about it is, although he was a bad, that he wasn't really liked amongst the people like that because of how he ruled, he's way more diplomatic, way better than what they got with the Ayatollah. We gonna see how that panned out for him. What they should have did, from my opinion, is just got a different president, but stayed on that path, right? Even though this guy, the Shah, was implemented by the United States and Britain, I guess he got the big head and wasn't spreading the wealth to the people. So they looking at him, but they not knowing that what they gonna get with the Ayatollah is gonna be way worse. So this was pivotal. They should have just got him out of office. They should have never went back to the Ayatollah. We're gonna get there though.
Which became notorious for human rights abuses. This period continued until the 1979 Islamic Revolution, when the Shah was overthrown. Operation Ajax gave rise to strong anti-Western sentiments in Iran, which still exist today. The effects of Operation Ajax were far-reaching. Democracy in Iran came to an end, and dictatorship was established, laying the groundwork for the 1979 revolution. In the Middle East, this event became an example of how Western powers intervened to protect their interests. In the global oil industry, it was a milestone as it weakened the nationalization movement and influenced the formation of OPEC. Economically, Western companies earned billions of dollars from Iranian oil, while Iran faced political instability. This event was part of Cold War strategy, during which the United States and Britain intervened in many countries. Even today, this incident remains a major cause of tension in Iran-U.S. relations. In 2013, the CIA officially acknowledged its involvement in this operation, highlighting its historical importance.
Now, that's Barack Obama in his second term. And I mentioned this in the last video when he came in with a diplomatic approach. And I think he had the right intention, but it backfired. We probably gonna go into how it backfired on another video, but I'm gonna get there with Obama and his Iran nuclear deal in 2013. And yeah, that backfired. But this is just a brief history of events that led up to where we are today.
The 1953 Operation Ajax is a tragic event that symbolizes the struggle for democracy, sovereignty, and economic justice. The removal of Mohammad Mossadegh not only transformed Iran, but also affected global politics. It teaches us that powerful countries can go to any extent to protect their interests, and that developing nations must remain vigilant in safeguarding their sovereignty. Mossadegh's legacy is still alive in Iran, where he is remembered as a national hero.
Hey, man, you know, regardless of how you feel, we can leave that right there. Regardless of how you feel, you got to respect the fact of why, knowing the history and what the United States and Britain did to their democracy back in 1953, you got to respect the fact of why they were upset with the United States, right? But like I said in the last video, what Obama did, he made it right. You know, I think like after what Obama did, Iran should have fell back. It should have been cool, but they still was talking about, you know, death to America, death to Israel. Like, I understand y'all mad, but a lot of y'all had to have something to do with that operation for it to even be successful. You know what I'm saying? And it ain't worth death to America in 2026 over something that happened back then when we done gave you billions of dollars. You know what I'm saying? And all type of other stuff. And you steady looking for a nuclear weapon to blow us away. You know what I'm saying? But we're going to stay back in the day for now, right? Now, the Shah is in office, right? He working with the United States. We got access to the oil. And you see how Iran looks now? It's a totally different vibe back then. From the 1940s, 50s, 60s, up to the 70s, they looked just like Western civilization. Right? So I want to bring up this video to show you that Iran looked at totally in 1979. That ain't that long ago. You know what I'm saying? To show you like how Iran looked, you know, versus how it looks today. So let me get the right video up here. Here we go. Now, they're going to start off showing you how Iran looks today, and then they're going to show you how it looked before the revolution in 1979, before the Islamic regime came in.
In 1979, a city disappeared.
This Iran today, you know, the women walking around covered up, they got to wear all the, you know, the stuff around the head and all that. This is today. Now they're gonna show you what it looked like, these same streets back in 1974.
Not from the map, from memory. Valiasar Avenue, once called Pahlavi. 14 miles of plane trees cutting through Tehran's heart.
Look at this. This look just like the United States, like they walking down Hollywood Boulevard or something. You know what I'm saying? Back in the day. They got the 70s look. It looked westernized, right? Let's continue.
Heart. Cafes spilled onto sidewalks. European boutiques. Persian bookshops. Men and women walked together. Tehran University. Knowledge had no gender here. Women in miniskirts debated philosophy with men in pressed shirts. The library stayed open until midnight. Dreams were written in Persian, French, English. The Tehran Hilton stood like a promise, glass and steel against the Alborz mountains. International businessmen, diplomats, artists. Mehrabad Airport, one of Asia's busiest. The world came here. This was a capital city reaching forward. An hour north, the Alborz became Europe. Shemshak, a Bali, ski chalets in alpine style. Tehran's young escaped here on winter weekends. The snow fell the same on everyone. Ferdowsi Avenue, named for Persia's greatest poet. Cars and pedestrians shared the street. Mellibank handled foreign commerce. Oil money flowed. The economy grew 40% in a decade. Not everyone benefited equally. Empress.
Now see, some people was eating, some people was getting money, but not everybody. It was like it was like either you rich or you poor. Wasn't no middle class. So man, people got tired of that. You know what I'm saying? And that's what started leading to the revolt. But this is under the Shah. When the Shah was in office, he didn't spread the wealth equally enough. Maybe he didn't understand how to lead. Maybe he had good intentions. He just didn't know how to have the great policies for all the people. Or maybe he did this intentionally. Whatever the case may be, you see how it was back then. It looked very westernized, and everybody just wasn't on equal standing ground, though. You know, at least, you know, if you do have rich, poor, you got a middle class to kind of balance things out. It didn't seem like they had that. It was either you up or you down, and it seemed like it was more people that was down than it was up.
Farah Diba championed the arts. She opened museums, funded universities, wore Dior to ceremonies. The Shah took the ancient title Shahanshah, King of Kings. The past and future collided. Cinema Rex, Golden City, Park. Gregory Peck and Sophia Loren on the marquees. Iranian directors made films that won at Cannes. The camera captured a country in transition. Art asked dangerous questions, but questions have consequences. The bazaar never changed. Copper merchants, spice sellers. 5 times daily, the call to prayer echoed over traffic noise. Many women still wore chadors. The countryside lived centuries away from Valiasa Avenue. In 1977, voices grew louder. Writers read poetry at the Goethe Institute. 10 nights of carefully chosen words.
Now, mind you, I just remember something. The Ayatollah, at this time, he left in exile because the Shah was in power. The Ayatollah was in Paris. He was in other states. He was in Turkey. He was in he was in Iraq. But whole time he was writing books and giving speeches on cassette tapes, blasting the Shah. And a lot of people that was in Iran was getting a hold of these tapes and these books, and they started to like, man, you know, we want to go back to an Islamic state because we ain't eating. The Shah over here acting like he the puppet of the United States. He the puppet of westernized civilization. You know, this Iran, this Persia, you know, we ain't trying to kiss up to Western civilization and all that. So they started to get radicalized and get speeches on getting back to, you know, being with the Islamic State, with the regime. So this was just setting the stage while the Ayatollah Khomeini was feeding them books, feeding them tapes while he was in exile, and they gonna request his return.
Students marched. Oil prices fell. Inflation rose. The secret police, SAVAK, watched. The pressure built. December 1978. 2 million filled the streets. Shahayad Square disappeared under humanity. January 16th, 1979. The Shah fled. February 1st, Khomeini returned. Several million.
Man, 1979. January, the Shah fled. They millions of people on the street calling for the Ayatollah Khomeini to come back. They're like, hey, we got the tape, we got your mixtape. You know what I'm saying? We got the mixtapes, bro. We got the mixtapes, man. We feeling that you spitting that fire, man. This like a Tupac tape to them or something. Like, man, it's like Tupac when he signed with Death Row. Hey, man, let Pac out of there, man. We need Pac back out of jail, man. He ain't do nothing to that lady, man. Khomeini was like Tupac going to Death Row, getting out of jail.
Million greeted him. He said nothing when asked how he felt, just nothing. Every sign of the monarchy came down. Statues toppled, street names changed. Valiasa Avenue kept its trees, but the cafes closed. The Hilton became the Esteghlal. The same building, different world. March 8th, 1979, International Women's Day. Thousands of women marched against the mandatory hijab. In the dawn of freedom, there is no freedom, their signs read. They had helped make the revolution. Now it turned against them. The same university entrance, different rules. Gender-segregated classrooms, dress codes enforced, libraries purged. The questions students could ask grew narrower. Some fled, some adapted, some resisted quietly.
So the Islamic regime is coming in. They asked for it, though. You know what I'm saying? Because they didn't like the Shah. But this is more controlled government. The regime that Khomeini is bringing, Ayatollah bringing, y'all really ain't gonna have no women's rights. Y'all really can't get out here and protest. Y'all, if y'all do, we gonna understand. The regime is a very extreme form of Islam. They under Sharia law. I talked about this in other videos. You got Sunni Muslim, you got Sharia law Muslims, right? Sharia law is extreme. Like if they find out you're a homosexual, they throwing you off the bridge type situation. If they find out if you a female and you don't have your hijab on and you think you're gonna be trying to entice a man on the street, you liable to get all type of stuff done to you. Go to jail, even worse, right? It's very, very extreme. Sharia law is now what they are having to adapt to. Now, they went from bad to worse. We was allies back then, even though the situation wasn't perfect. United States had institutions over there. Iran, Israel, and everybody was cool. Now you see it's starting to fade away, and the people, starting to adapt to this new form of life, a new form of government, and new religions.
Quietly. Cinema Rex, Abadan, August 19th, 1978. 400 died in the fire, the worst moment of the revolution. Each side blamed the other. The truth burned with the building. The movies stopped playing. Shahayad Tower, built in 1971 to celebrate 2,500 years of Persian monarchy, renamed Azadi Tower, Freedom Tower. Same white stone arch, different meaning. The architecture survived, the context vanished. Mehrabad Airport, different crowds now. Departure gates, not arrivals. Hundreds of thousands left. Jews, Baha'is, secularists, those who could afford to flee. Los Angeles, London, Paris. They carried Tehran in their memories. Some places just stopped. A cafe with chairs still arranged for customers who never came back. A boutique with 1979 fashions gathering dust. Time moved forward, but parts of Tehran stayed frozen, ghosts of a city that was. Today, Tehran has 20 million souls. The trees on Valiasa Avenue are older. The mountains haven't moved. Young Iranians who never knew the Shah navigate different restrictions. They dream different dreams. History weighs heavy here. In Los Angeles, in London, in Tehran itself, people keep photographs, faded color, their parents young, the city open. They show their children, this was Tehran. The children ask, was it really like this? Yes and no. Memory edits history. What disappeared in 1979 wasn't just a government, it was possibility. The idea that tradition and modernity could coexist, that women could choose, that questions had no danger. Every revolution promises liberation. This one delivered a different.
Now you see that to the left, it say Shah's birthday. To the right, I mean, we don't know what they say, but we see a picture of Khomeini. And, you know, the difference in these pictures is uncanny. You know, one is westernized, one is, you know, looks just like any other Islamic country, you know, and that's what happened. Basically, you know, we could stop that right there with the revolution. You know what I'm saying? That's how it used to look back in before the revolution, right? And I just wanted to give y'all that much so you can see how things had changed, you know. And I think that because I've seen videos, and I've said this in the other videos, of Iranians saying they missed those times, even though the Shah wasn't the greatest leader. It was just much better back then. You know, when we were able to, you know, go to Iran and things of that nature, and it wasn't so much beef. We were allies. But now, once the regime came in and they, you know, took over, and it was way worse. You know what I'm saying? But I understand their frustration. Now, I want to bring up this here to kind of like illustrate a little bit more on that time in 1979 and how it fell out, the revolution. So let's bring that up here. Got a little clip for you.
Least, and its aftershocks still echo through the region today. February 11, 1979. The day Iran changed forever. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, overthrown while overseas, and in his place, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a cleric who would transform Iran into an Islamic republic. Iran had once been a rapidly modernizing nation, Western-aligned, economically strong, women's rights on the rise. But beneath the surface, the Shah ruled like a dictator, silencing opposition, crushing dissent, and ignoring the voice of his people. Enter Khomeini, a vocal critic of the Shah's reforms, exiled but not forgotten. His message? Iran was losing its soul to the West. His followers grew. His words became fire. In 1978, protests erupted. Black Friday left 100 dead. Oil workers went on strike. Iran was paralyzed. By January 1979, the Shah fled. 10 days later, Khomeini returned. Within weeks, Iran became an Islamic republic. Khomeini declared a government ruled by Islamic jurists, Velayat-e-Faqih, but hopes of freedom quickly vanished. Women's rights were rolled back, opposition silenced, thousands executed. Iran had traded one form of authoritarianism for another. The revolution didn't just reshape Iran, it redrew the map of the Middle East, and its aftershocks still echo through the region today.
Wow. So that was basically a great breakdown, you know what I'm saying, on what actually happened during that time, you know what I'm saying? Like they substituted one bad leader to another, to a worse one. You know what I'm saying? And it's just crazy how, you know, all of that fell out. Now, to wrap everything up, and we're gonna fast forward to present, you know, to recent times with Obama, you know, making things right. So let's wrap up the past in this one video right here before we move any forward. You know what I'm saying? So let's do this. And this Joe Rogan, he basically break it down. So when we done with this, we're gonna move forward to what actually happened with the nuclear deal with Obama in 2013.
It's like at the fall, I guess it was in the 70s when so this is the story for people that don't know about Iran. So there was a gentleman who was democratically elected. So he decided that he was going to nationalize oil in Iran, and they got him out like that. They installed the Shah and turned it into the CIA and the British government, and everybody conspired to get rid of this democratically elected guy, because Iran at the time was like, women were wearing shorts or skirts rather, walking down the street. Mohammed Mossadegh. It says Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh was removed from power in a coup organized and financed by British and U.S. governments. The Shah quickly returned to take power and signed off over 40% of Iran's oil fields to U.S. companies. It's crazy, man. In 1953, the CIA and British intelligence orchestrated a coup d'etat that toppled the democratically elected government of Iran. The government of Mohammad Mossadegh, the aftershocks of the coup are still being felt. President Harry Truman rejected the idea, but when Dwight Eisenhower took over the White House, he ordered the CIA to embark on one of its first covert operations against a foreign government. And Iran's been fucked ever since.
Crazy work, right? You know what I'm saying? When you think about it, man, they had every right to be pissed at the United States, but not to the point where death to America. They teach their children that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a way to go about things and right wrongs that have happened in the past. Like, for example, we have Black people in America, Native Americans that have suffered, you know, the transatlantic slave trade and things of that nature. You know, Native Americans got ambushed on their own land. You know, it's just ways now that you can work things out. And I think, you know, Obama tried to go that route, and it just happened to backfire. Because over them years, you know what I'm saying, from 1979, like I said, I'm going to do another video and talk about what happened with Jimmy Carter, you know, in 1980, when he tried to go over there. Because when they did the revolution, we had United States citizens that were in Iran, and they were taken as hostages. Iran has unalived thousands of American citizens through the years from the 80s. Over the last 50 years, they have unalived a lot of United States citizens. You know, people didn't have nothing to do with what happened in 1953. You know what I'm saying? Joe Biden opened up the border wide open for anybody to come over here. They've been taught since birth, death to America, you know, death to Israel. Why would you leave the border wide open? I mean, people coming from Mexico or Venezuela is the least of our worries. We got people that really want to do harm to us just because they hate America for whatever reason. You know, something we ain't had nothing to do about. Right? But I want to wrap up what actually happened and how it happened in 1979. I forgot I got one more video before we move forward. So let's so y'all get a full understanding and the gravity of what happened during the revolution. Because they're going to talk about the hostages and everything in this short video. It's only a couple minutes. I didn't intend for this to be this long, but I appreciate y'all because I love history. And I've been studying this nonstop since this kicked off.
40 years ago, Shiite Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini spearheaded a revolution that deposed the monarchy in Iran. In its place arose an Islamic republic. A repressive theocracy had replaced an authoritarian monarchy. And almost overnight, Iran had been transformed from a crucial US ally into a bitter opponent. Here are some of the key dates that led to the revolution. From 1941 to 1979, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, a close partner of the United States, had ruled Iran. He modernized Iran while forcefully suppressing dissent and political freedoms. The clergy opposed the Shah's social and economic reforms. Discontent grew until in 1978, anti-Shah demonstration spread across the mostly Shia country. Strikes and mass protests erupted, and accusation flew that the Shah was the US puppet. Martial law was imposed. Cassette tapes of speeches by the 76-year-old Khomeini were
I'm telling you, man, Khomeini was like Tupac back then, dog. Now, he passed away during the, right after the war with Iraq ended in like 1988. And then, Khomeini came into power, the guy after him that just got taken out by Trump and his administration in this war now. The guy that came after him, Trump and them just took him out in what we got going on now. But yeah, man, them tapes was like all eyes on me. And
smuggled into the country, fueling the unrest. Many Iranians took to the rooftops at night to shout Allahu Akbar, or God is great, to express their protest. On January 16, 1979, the Shah left Iran for what was officially a vacation. Many Iranians rejoiced with chants of "The Shah is gone." The man who'd ruled the country for 37 years would never return from exile, dying some 13 months later. On February 1st, a crowd of around 3 million people in Tehran welcomed Khomeini's return from 14 years of exile. Asked about his feelings, the Islamic revivalist famously gave a cryptic one-word answer: nothing. Finally, on February 11th, the revolutionaries declared victory after Iran's demoralized armed forces declared neutrality. The monarchy was suddenly gone. Deadly factionalism followed, but Khomeini held the upper hand. And in April, following a nationwide referendum, an Islamic Republic was officially proclaimed, eventually with Khomeini at its apex. Thousands of Shah-era officials and other Iranians would be executed following summary trials. Student revolutionaries would storm the US embassy, taking dozens hostage. Tehran would doggedly pursue
See, that's when they took the Americans that was over there hostage. I think they had them for, like a little over a year. Yeah, it was brutal.
Anti-Western policies for decades to come. The revolution's 40th anniversary arrives at a critical juncture for the Islamic Republic, hobbled by US sanctions, infighting, and the frustration of a restless young populace, most of whom were born after the revolution. Some regime insiders have warned recently that the Islamic establishment could collapse. Even one of Khomeini's own grandsons warns there's no guarantee that this system his grandfather created would survive.
Man. Deep stuff, right? You know what I'm saying? The revolution was televised in that situation. But yeah, man, I want to get to Barack Obama and just play a small clip of him. We're going to fast forward to 2013. That was 1980. Like I said, every president had to deal with Iran, its threats. They had to deal with, attacks throughout the years. They had other people, the Houthis, Hezbollah, that, we have to deal with the fact that they telling us that they didn't have military. They didn't have a nuclear weapon that could reach farther than. And then we find out in this war that they've been lying, that they do have the ability to target, almost get to America. So it's been a lot going on. And I think Obama tried to take a diplomatic approach to settle it. Like, he acknowledged that what happened in 1953, and he thought he did the right thing by trying to, do this nuclear, Iran nuclear war agreement, right? So let's check this out. What Obama did in 2013, which I don't think was, a bad idea. It just it was only a temporary. It was like a Band-Aid over a gunshot wound. You know what I'm saying? If you ask me.
In Iran, we see where the path of a violent and unaccountable ideology leads. The Iranian people have a remarkable and ancient history. And many Iranians wish to enjoy peace and prosperity alongside their neighbors. But just as it restricts the rights of its own people, the Iranian government continues to prop up a dictator in Damascus and supports terrorist groups abroad. Time and again, it has failed to take the opportunity to demonstrate that its nuclear program is peaceful and to meet its obligations to the United Nations. So let me be clear. America wants to resolve this issue through diplomacy, and we believe that there is still time and space to do so. But that time is not unlimited. We respect the right of nations to access peaceful nuclear power. But one of the purposes of the United Nations is to see that we harness that power for peace. And make no mistake, a nuclear-armed Iran is not a challenge that can be contained. It would threaten the elimination of Israel, the security of Gulf nations, and the stability of the global economy. It risks triggering a nuclear arms race in the region and the unraveling of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. That's why a coalition of countries is holding the Iranian government accountable. And that's why the United States will do what we must to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
All right. So you see that. Now, this Iran getting a nuclear weapon, that's 2013. And Obama was talking about it. Like I said, he sent them $1.7 billion. And I think that although he may have had good intentions, it backfired, because all you did was give them money and you told them for 10 years that you can't, create a nuclear weapon threat. So you just basically kick the bucket down the road for the next generation, the next president to deal with. We still dealing with these threats. We still dealing with these attacks. I think at that point, Iran should have been like, hey, man, United States tried to make it right. Whatever happened back in the day, it's over with. But it didn't stop, right? And this is basically a breakdown of what the deal entailed, so you can see it for yourself. This is the Iran nuclear deal explained.
Iran has reached a historic agreement with major world powers over its nuclear program. But what is Iran giving up, and how does it benefit in the long run? The 109-page document boils down to 5 main areas. Number 1, Iran's uranium stockpile. Uranium is the key ingredient necessary in order to operate a nuclear program. The deal requires Iran to give up 97% of its enriched uranium, taking its stockpile from 10,000 kilograms down to just 300 kilograms. That's much less than what's needed to fuel one nuclear weapon, although Iran maintains the capacity to increase the stockpile quickly. Number 2, uranium enrichment. Uranium comes in different levels of enrichment. A purity of 90% is what's needed to make a weapon. Per the deal, Iran can still produce a modest amount of uranium enriched at low levels, just 3.67%. And if Iran abides by the deal, enrichment is limited in this way for 15 years. Number 3. Reduction of centrifuges. Centrifuges are the machines used to enrich uranium. Iran has to give up 2/3 of its centrifuges. Some 19,000 used for enrichment need to be reduced to about 5,000. Iran can also have 1,000 more for research and development. So what this means is, if Iran abides by the deal, for the next decade, it will take Iran at least 12 months to produce enough fuel for a nuclear weapon. And to make sure it doesn't cheat, there will be, number 4, inspections. UN inspectors will be allowed to monitor nuclear and other sites, including military ones, but Iran can challenge requests for access. The inspectors need to provide a basis for concern about undeclared nuclear activity. Any Iranian challenge could delay inspections for up to 24 days. Critics say that could be enough time for Tehran to remove evidence it was carrying out banned activities. So what does Iran get for accepting all of this? Number 5, sanctions relief. The US, the European Union, and the United Nations will relieve many energy, economic, and financial sanctions against Iran that have been crippling the country's economy. Sanctions will likely lift early next year if Iran complies with the principal requirements in the deal. This is great news for Iran's 82 million people, as it's expected to massively boost the economy, increase trade, and bring new investment into the country. So what's everyone else saying? The Obama administration and many European allies see the agreement as a major victory for diplomacy between Iran and the West.
This moment has been a long time coming.
Every pathway to a nuclear weapon is cut off.
But the deal has angered some critics in Republican-led Congress and some parts of the Middle East, including Israel and Saudi Arabia.
What a stunning, historic mistake.
They say the deal lifts all economic pressure on Iran and worry that this windfall will increase Tehran's funding of organizations like Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Assad regime in Syria. They also say the deal only curbs Iran's nuclear program for 10 to 15 years, allowing Iran to move back to the brink of nuclear weapon status without paying any price.
Right. So basically all they did was give Iran a 10-year, you can't create a nuclear weapon for 10 years. That then we right back to where we at. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that was, I think that maybe Obama thought that they probably would have thought after 10 years, all right, man, we ain't going to try to, they tried to make it right. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, they sent them $1.7 billion on top of that. When Donald Trump got in his first term in 2018, he opted out of that deal. And I'm going to bring that clip up to show how Trump felt about it when he ended that deal in his first term. Let's roll this clip.
Over the past few months, we have engaged extensively with our allies and partners around the world, including France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. We have also consulted with our friends from across the Middle East. We are unified in our understanding of the threat and in our conviction that Iran must never acquire a nuclear weapon. After these consultations, it is clear to me that we cannot prevent an Iranian nuclear bomb under the decaying and rotten structure of the current agreement. The Iran deal is defective at its core. If we do nothing, we know exactly what will happen. In just a short period of time, the world's leading state sponsor of terror will be on the cusp of acquiring the world's most dangerous weapons. Therefore, I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. In a few moments, I will sign a presidential memorandum to begin reinstating U.S. nuclear sanctions on the Iranian regime. We will be instituting the highest level of economic sanction. Any nation that helps Iran in its quest for nuclear weapons could also be strongly sanctioned by the United States. America will not be held hostage to nuclear blackmail. We will not allow American cities to be threatened with destruction, and we will not allow a regime that chants death to America to gain access to the most deadly weapons on earth.
All right. Okay, so, man, bro, I really just wanted to go ahead and give y'all this brief timeline of events with the receipts, you know, and I have to agree with President Trump, because even after that deal was over with, it started in 2016, and we are now in 2026. If he didn't opt out of that deal, they would have had a nuclear weapon by now. And we were under constant threat of a nuclear bomb coming in our direction. And this, you know, was back in Trump's first term. And here we are in the second term, and we are where we at. Now, I'm going to do some more parts to this because there's so much more that I didn't get to, and I'm over an hour in this video, but there's a lot more information. I want to break down what actually happened with Jimmy Carter, George Bush, Clinton, all the other presidential administrations, and the threat, the constant threats, and all of the unalivings. I'm gonna get more in detail with that aspect of Iran versus the United States, and also I'm going to break down the history of Israel and where they fall into that. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you got some great information out of it. Tap the like button, share this. I hope you learned something. Man, it's a lot of great information. But we have to be clear that Iran having a nuclear weapon was a extreme threat. That wasn't nothing to play with. So although I'm against the war, I understand that sometimes there is a time for war, right? It's your boy Jay Taylor, Voices for the Voiceless. We love y'all. And until next time, we should see you soon. Peace and blessings.